So I have open, let me move this. I have open Adobe InDesign. You can see I use it quite a lot actually. I use it not only for programming, which if you are a third year, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They ask you to do a booklet. So that's kind of where you first get introduced at a school program project, but I also use it for my job and it's super, super helpful. And I've also been using it this fall semester to do my presentations. So all of my booklets, which I turned in for midterm, were done through Adobe InDesign. So just to start off, you're going to create a new file. And from here, what you're going to do is you can there's the option to download presets. So let's say, for example, you very specifically want to do a booklet and you want to get it printed. A lot of times printing companies will either give you an InDesign file that comes with all of the bleeds, all of the margins. That way you just have to build your file on top of it and you can send it in. There won't be any publication issues. But as a standard, you can just very easily make your file as well. So let's say you want to do a board to print or plot at the COAD. A lot of times you might be working with like an 18 by 36, a really, really long plot. If you want to do a booklet, you could also do, a 8.5 by 11. Let's say you want to print it out on a standard printer. So you do 8.5 by 11. And then you can set the orientations. You can, if you know how many pages you're going to be needing, you can right off the bat set how many pages it's going to be. And you can also tell it what number to start at. This is, for example, really helpful if you're doing a really long booklet and you want to number the pages at the top left or at the bottom right, whatever it is that you decide. You can tell it, oh, I don't want you to start numbering at page 1. I want you to start numbering at page 5 because I'm going to add on additional pages at the front, whatever it is that you need. In addition to that, there's a little button here called facing pages. So when it comes to booklets, if you're doing a book, you want to use facing pages, which essentially means that InDesign is going to recognize that it's a booklet and that you have one page that faces another page. So 2 pages that face each other is called a spread. So if you have 4 spreads, that ends up meaning that you have at minimum 8 pages. If you're counting the back of one and the back of the other, then that ends up being 10 because you have 1, 2, so on and so forth. If you're doing a booklet for like a fall, like right now we're doing a lot of online work and you might want to do it in a booklet format, you might want to have facing pages. That way, let's say you have an axon that takes like the entire 2-page spread. That way it'll show up as a 2-page spread when you do it. I'm going to show you really quickly how we do that as well. So I'm going to turn on facing pages. I also want to turn on my gutters. Gutters are helpful if you're getting things published because it's not a full bleed in the center. It's always going to need to get trimmed. So it'll show you that trim line and how much is going to be removed. In addition to that, you can set margins. My margins are pretty standard at 1/2 inch all the way around. You can also do columns for the column gutter. Traditionally, you only need 1 column. If you don't, you're probably doing some crazy booklet format that has multiple column gutters. And then, like I said, if you're getting things published, you also need to remember bleeds. So bleed is really helpful when it comes to publishing because when they publish something, they'll print it and then they'll trim it. So your margin is the true line where you're hoping like the inside of the page. But then your bleed line essentially tells the publisher anything beyond this line, do not cut because this is important and we want to keep it. It basically gives them a little margin of error when it comes to cutting the pages and lining them all up. So bleed lines are important. You probably will not need a bleed line for anything at our level, but it's good to mention just so if you see it, you know what it is. So you can also preview it if you would like. And then here it'll pull it up right behind my little new document thing. I probably should close out my Rhino file. I just realized that I still have it open and it's slowing down my computer. Okay, so here we go. We see 1 page. I'm going to really quickly add a 2nd page just so you can see what that facing page looks like. So we're going to tell it that we're going to do 2 pages and that we want to preview it. Let's see if it'll update it. I'm not sure if it will. Actually, anyway, I'm not sure if it's going to update, so I'm just going to create the file. And while I'm at it, I'm going to close out of this Rhino file. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so we have our file made. This is just right off the bat what it looks like. And so here you can see it actually did preview it. So this page at the very top is your cover. That is why it is off on its own. The other thing at the bottom is your first page. Oh my goodness, Rhino, calm down. So if I were to add another page, you'll notice it creates a facing page, which is separate than the cover. So this is what I mean when I talk about facing pages and also, you know, covers and backends. That's kind of what that looks like. So right off the bat, let's say we want to put our name on this because that's important to us. Over here, you have all of the different tools that you might be needing, and then you have additional tools on the right-hand side. The really cool thing about Adobe InDesign is that it has a lot of different uses. You can use it for like internet stuff. You can use it for online publications. When I say internet, that's what I mean. You can use it for print publications. You can use it for magazines. You can even use it for books. So it comes with different workspaces. So for example, if you're writing a book, you might use the book workspace. If you're using a digital publication, you could use the digital publication workspace. If you're using for printing, you could use that. If you're doing interactive PDFs, there's even an option for that. All it does is it reworks what things it offers you right off the bat. So for example, with the interactive PDF one, it'll give me the buttons that people can click when you want to do an interactive PDF online that'll hyperlink to other things. Basically, it's just trying to prepare for what it is that you might need, but I just for the most part try to go for the essentials or the essentials classic. It has a little bit of everything, so it's a very general workspace, and I find that it's pretty beneficial in that sense. So up here you have the selection tool, which is literally just you can select things. If you have the white one, it's more of like points, so you can click and, you know, drag and drop those points, make them different shapes and stuff. So it's a little bit more specific. Here you can see like I can click on a specific point and delete it rather than only selecting the full thing. Then you have over here the page tool. The page tool just helps you if you want to, it's basically like if you know Illustrator, the page tool is the artboard tool in Illustrator. So you can change the size of the artboard, which is essentially the size of the page here. I'm going to do that because we don't have any content. We're going to really quickly add in some like graphics, let's say you want the front page of your book to be a collage. So what I want to do is I want to create little frames. Notice the word I used, frame. And these frames are going to have pictures in them. So there's a difference. There's a rectangle tool and then there's the frame tool. So a frame tool is any object, either a rectangle or a circle or even a polygon, that has the option for holding images inside of it. So if I were to just draw a standard rectangle, it is now a frame and I can plop a little image in there. Frames are really helpful if you want to keep your stuff orderly and tidy. So for example, let's say you want to make sure that all of your images are the same size. So I want it to be a square. What I do is I hold down Shift and it'll automatically give me a square shape. But let's say in addition to that, I also want to create some additional, oh, I accidentally messed that up and I locked it. No, I locked it. There you go. That's the other thing that you can do with InDesign is you can like start locking things and then that way it doesn't mess up. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. So if you hold down the rectangle tool and then you hit one of the different arrows, it'll add additional, so like here, there we go. It'll add additional frames and it'll make them all the same proportional size. If at that point I then hold the Shift, it'll make sure that they're all squares. So there we go. I right off the bat have a 4 grid. And then this tool over here, which is the gap tool, it then helps me select any one of those gaps, and then I can just change them. I can make them bigger, I can make them smaller. If I hold down Control, it'll bring them apart rather than just moving one of them. If I hold down Alt, it'll shift the entire column rather than moving them away from each other. So this is a really easy way to just quickly populate in frames that you can then fill with images. In addition to that, there's the type tool, which is just really helpful. You know, at the top, you see how when you have the type tool open, it lets you select what type of fonts you want, whether it's like bold or italics. It also lets you pick the font size as well as the spacing between the stuff. You can also tell it to do all caps. You can tell it to do a superscript. You can tell it to strike through. Pretty typical stuff when it comes to word processing. A lot of these things you can see in like Microsoft Word. There's also different alignment tools, which are really great. So you can align to the left, you can justify. This is if you have really, really long text. You can help decide what that formatting for the paragraph is going to look like. In addition to that, something that is really nice if you're doing paragraphs or things of that nature, let's say I want to write, hi, my name is Maria, but I want the hi to be its own thing. I can tell it to bring that indent in. Oh my goodness. Let me see if I can do it. That's to bring the whole thing in. But then if I want to just bring one of it in, it is over here. I don't use the top very much, oddly enough. I end up using the buttons more than anything. Here we go. So I can, for example, I didn't want it to make it that big. So this one helps make like the letters bigger. So here you can see, this is kind of what you see at a normal paragraph where it's like the first letter is big. Hi, my name is Maria. In addition to that, you can also bring it in, and then you can also like decide how big that spacing is between paragraphs. So all of your text tools only work when you click on the text itself. So if I click on the box, it's going to give me all the options for the box, but it's not going to give me the options for the actual text. To modify the actual text, I have to click on the box and then have the text highlighted that I want to modify. You can also do bullets. You can also do numbers. It's pretty good processing in terms of formatting and stuff. So if you can do it in Microsoft Word, you can almost, I definitely do it in some way through InDesign as well. There's also the hyphenate tool. The hyphenate tool basically gives the hyphen at the end. I normally uncheck that because I don't like hyphens. I prefer it to just go to the new page or to the new not paragraph, to the new line. What else? There is also, for example, if I want to, let's say I want to have a lot of text, but I don't remember where it is to do. Let me see if I can find it. Type. Nope, that's not what I wanted. There's a way, if I can find it, where you can just put in fake text and then you can see how it looks when you like start changing the settings. Fill with placeholder text. There we go. Okay, this is sometimes what I do when I'm formatting my original spreads, and I just want to see how the format might look. So like I said, go to type, fill with placeholder text. It'll just fill it with random gibberish that you can then play around with and see what it looks like. So let's say I really, really like how this is looking. I think it's super cool, but I wish there was 2 columns. You know how that sometimes happens in magazines where you have like 1 column and then a second? Traditionally speaking, the easiest thing that one might think to do is to literally cut the bottom of the text box and then move it and paste it into another text box. But InDesign actually has a really easy way that you can do this. So you highlight the text, you go to properties, and you tell it that you want to do multiple columns. So where is it? Let me see if I can find it. Right as I say that, I lose where it is that it happens. Oh, God. If anybody else knows exactly what I'm talking about and can help me find it, because I'm a dummy that can't remember sometimes. Please do speak up. Here we go. Okay, never mind. What happened was that I had the text highlighted, but what you want to do is not have the text highlighted. You just want to highlight the box. And then once you highlight the box, you come down here and you tell it that you want to do multiple text frames. And then that'll automatically give you multiple little columns with the text following through. You can also change the size of that like gutter in between the two. So if I want the gutter to be bigger, I just tell it right here, I want ½ an inch in between each of my gutters. And then there's additional options if you want to get really fancy with it, like insert top spacings and other things of that nature. So that's kind of text condensed. Again, there's a lot of other things that you can do with text, and it's really easy once you just like start to click on the buttons and figure out what each one is. If you want to download fonts, I showed how to find fonts and then download fonts, I think in my last Illustrator tutorial, but really quickly, something that I a lot of times do is I don't like the standard fonts that come. Sometimes I want to use Helvetica, sometimes I want to use other ones. So a lot of times I'll just download font families and then I'll install them, and then you can just go to font or type and then like find the font here. It should automatically show up. Yeah, you can also do that through Adobe. They have an entire font library. If you have a subscription, you can just download fonts and they'll show up here. And then you can also tell it, in addition, others like special characters. So some of the special characters that you can find are like quotation marks. You can find hyphens, you know, other symbols. Something that you can also do is if you want to put in, where is it? Like tabs. If you want to add in some markers for like the next page or a footnote, all of that is there. You can also do hyperlinks if you're doing like a online file and you want to hyperlink to a website or something. You can easily just do a hyperlink right here. And then you can also do some like break characters where you want to like come back. But again, that's for like a lot of publishing. Let's say I want to really quickly make sure that everything is lined up at the center. I can create guides, and these guides will help me align things. But let's say I want this center line to show up on all of my pages. At that point, what I would most likely do is I'd create something called a master. Masters are really helpful if you want to follow the same format across the entire thing. But you can also, for example, create masters of different types. So a lot of times what publishing houses will do is they'll create 4 or 5 different standard masters, and then they'll just like alternate between them. To find that, you go to pages. So in pages, you see that it says, you know, the pages down here, 3 pages on 2 different spreads. We talked about what's the difference between those. But then up the top, it says a master. So a master is essentially the master that these 3 pages are using, marked by the A at the little top right-hand corner and top left-hand corner. And anything that's on this page is going to be automatically duplicated onto my pages that are marked with the A. So if I were to put in a guide in the very center of my page on both pages, I'm just eyeballing it really. Immediately when I go back to page A, it'll show up on all of them because I made that change on the master page, if that makes sense. So let's say I want my name to show up on the bottom of every single page. I can come over here and do Maria Noguera, Studio 3500, and then fix it up so it's a little bit smaller, and then change the font because I don't like that. There you go. When I go back, sure enough, there they are on every single one. And you'll notice that it'll only do it on the side that I did it because it's a double page spread. So if I do it on the right hand, it won't show up on the cover. It'll only show up on the left hand pages, my bad. If I were to do it on the right hand pages, it would show up on this page as well. But sorry. Let's say I don't want that. Let's say I want a master for just my cover, and then I want a master for everything else. So what I would do at that point is I would make a new master. So to do that, I just right-clicked in this little box area. Anywhere in there works. I'm going to call it master B. You can base it off of other things. So let's say I really liked how master A was. I just want to make a few small changes, not anything too big, and I don't want to redo all the work. So I can base it off of my original master and it'll basically just copy it. And then I can tell it how many pages I want that to be, the size of it, and the orientation of it. As of now, everything is perfect, so we're just going to create it. So this is now my master for the cover, essentially. Traditionally, you might want to go in order, but I mean, this is totally fine. So over here, I'm going to put my name on this side. We're going to make that text box smaller, put my name. Do the exact same thing, change the font. There we go. And then this is now master B. I don't like how the text is aligned to the right. That doesn't really, I mean, left. That doesn't really make sense. I want it aligned to the right. So I'll click on the box, change the alignment. It doesn't show up here. When I double click, it does though. So there you go. I switched it to the left. Now it makes sense because it's aligned to that margin. So I go back to my first page, which is where I want it, but it doesn't show up. So the thing is that master pages don't show up until you apply them to the pages. So to do that, you have to drag and drop. You'll see here, it lets me select. And you can do both pages, or you can just do one page. I mean, it really doesn't matter. You can select where you want it. So I want it to be on the first page, and then sure enough, there you go. It duplicated it. So if I try to click on this, it won't let me click on it. Why? Because it is part of the master page. It's not part of this page itself. But let's say I want to make a small change. There is a way to select this instead of just going to the master and then changing everything. What you do, if I remember correctly, is you, where is it? There we go. So if you hold down Control and Shift and then double click it, you have to very specifically like double click. It'll let you now do stuff to it because now it is no longer part of the master page. It is now part of your individual page. So this is really helpful. Let's say, to show you why it's really helpful, I want to put in a frame here that's going to just fill up the very center of the page. I'm going to make it bigger just so it looks a little bit better. Right about there. So now I have a frame that I can fill with a picture. And then in addition to that, I'm going to put some text down here. And instead of having my name at the bottom, I'm going to have it in the center. So I'm now going to fill this text with Maria Noguera. I can't type. We're going to call this Studio 3500 and then today's date, as if I was submitting it for final jury. And then what I can do is I can center it, change the font. I'm going to make it bold instead of just like the small regular because it's on the cover. Maybe not black, maybe just bold. There we go. And then I have that ready to go. So when I go back to my original page, there it shows up. But I can't click on this frame because it's part of the master. So again, Control Shift, double click on it. Now I can fill it in with a picture. So like a lot of times what I'll do, like at least for my programming book, this is a good example. For my programming book, what I did was I created 4 or 5 spreads in my master page, all with all of the different frames and the different alignments that I like. And I'll just create new pages. I'll drag and drop the master in, and then I'll just Control Shift, click on the frames, and now they're part of the page that I'm working on, and then I'll fill them with whatever it is that I need to fill them with. So that makes it really easy. I don't have to control, copy, try to fit it to where it was originally. And then because you see how when we made that change in B, we got rid of that bottom thing, but then when I came back to this page, it was still there. That's because I Control Shift clicked on it. So now it's no longer linked this object at least is no longer linked to master page B, it's now linked to page number 1. So that's another thing to remember, is that if you make changes to the master page, but you control shifted everything on the page, now nothing is going to remember what it was like linked to. So you're going to have to relink everything. That term linking is something that InDesign uses a lot. So for example, this frame is filled with a link. It's not filled with a picture, and it's not filled with a PDF. It's filled with a link very specifically. You'll notice at the right, it has a tab called links. So this link tab is every single object, every single file, every single instance that your InDesign file is referencing at any given time. So this is why, in my opinion, making your boards on Adobe InDesign is significantly better than doing it on Illustrator. Because when you're working in Illustrator, all of your vector graphics are on a giant sheet of paper, whether it's a plot or whether it's like a 4-page spread. And that slows down your computer, because your computer has to keep tabs on every single line and every single gradient and every single little thing that you did. As opposed to in InDesign, you're just linking to that. InDesign never really looks at those files. It just remembers, okay, Maria wanted her plan here, or Maria wanted her section here. The only time that it'll actually look at all those files is when you're sending it to print. So it's a lot less tedious on your computer to do large like formatting, because it just remembers all of those individual files. So for example, a lot of times what I'll do, let me pull it up. My files are crazy, I'm so sorry. If I go to phase B prints and then I go down to midterm, what I'll do a lot of times is I'll make a folder like you just saw called midterm, and I'll create PDFs, and I'll just like fill that folder with all of my PDFs and Illustrator files, rather than having one giant Illustrator file with all of those files together, if that makes sense. So really quickly, we're gonna show an example of this. So I'm going to fill this image with a Photoshop file that I made a while back. To do that, I click on the frame and I go to properties. And then from there, I go to import file. That's the button that you click. It's going to open up a little InDesign place tool. And then from there, I'm going to go to my studio files and I'm going to put in my JPEG. Okay, so this JPEG is really, really big. It was not made at scale for a 11.5 by 8.5 by 11. So when I double click it, you're going to see this orange box that shows up. That's the true size of the file. It's actually an 11 by 17. This box though is square, so it's kind of tricky. Like, what do I prioritize? Do I prioritize the height? Do I prioritize the length? There's, lucky for you, something called frame fitting. So InDesign is smart, and it recognizes that sometimes your file might not fit your frame. And so you can do stuff like auto fit, where it will remember what is best, and it'll try to like figure out what it is that would be best for the framing of it. Or you can just tell it like, okay, I want you to do content aware fit. At which point it'll try to see where the most important thing on the image is, and it'll fill the frame with that image. So that's actually pretty smart, because this side has a lot more things happening on it than the other side. So that was pretty smart of it. The other ones that you can do are, let me double click on it and go back to properties. You can also do, for example, like fit the frame proportionally. So at that point, it'll prioritize fitting it in the center and then having, you know, the edges cut off. You can also do fit it proportionally so that it prioritizes the full image, and then it'll have the top cut off. And then these two are, in my opinion, the worst ones that you can click, because these will warp your image. So if I click on that, you see it just like completely skewed it, which is not fun. And then if I do it in the other direction, it'll do the same thing. So I'm going to fix my frame. I'm going to make it a little bit wider, make it the full extent. And then I'm going to double click my, so if I click on it, it'll give me the frame. To select the image, I have to double click on it, and then you'll see this little orange box pop up. If you click on the center and then move it over, then I have the majority of the image, which is nice. I'm going to move it over a little bit more just so that it's centered, which works for me. Cool. So now I have my really beautiful Photoshop image that took me a while to do. I have my name at the front. I don't know what else I could put on this, but I feel like that's a pretty standard cover page that anybody could pull together in 5 minutes. The nice thing about this is that because it is linked, it's like you look up, it's not there really. It's like a ghost of the image. It's really, really pixelated. This is not the quality of the file. The quality of the file is much higher. So if I want to see what this image actually looks like, I can go into preview mode, which would be over here in like a screen mode. You can go to presentation, Shift W. So Shift W shows me what the image actually looks like. So the resolution of the image just got a lot higher. Another thing that I could do is, for example, go to view, and I can tell it to give me a high quality display. So when I click on high quality display, now I see the image in a lot better resolution. This is what it actually looks like. If your computer is super, super, super slow and you have a ton of images in your file, you can also tell it to completely ignore quality and to just do a fast display, which basically just blocks it out and shows a gray box. This is the file without prioritizing the quality of it. So if you go to the links, the file is still there. It's just not showing it so that your computer doesn't completely like die on itself because it has way too much happening on the screen, which is again really nice if you have a pretty slow computer that struggles with that kind of thing. I do not, so I'm going to go back to just typical display. Another really cool thing about Adobe InDesign is that with links, oh my God, I forgot that that was part of the master page and I was trying to click on it like a dummy. Okay, so let's say I want to have a 2-page spread. Pretty typical, you see that quite a bit. I'm using the rectangle tool. I am so sorry. So I've drawn my proportional frame at 11 by 17. And then let's say I want to put in another file of mine. So I click on the file or click on the frame, go to properties. I want to fill that frame with a file. At this point, I'm going to go back to my midterm folder and I'm going to do my Axon, which I think it's this one. I really don't know. I haven't checked these files in a while. I'm so sorry. These files are really, really big, as you can see. There you go. That was exactly what I was looking for. So this is, as you can see, it also looks super blurry. That's because it's prioritizing the speed of the file rather than the quality of the file. But let's say that I don't like how this file is looking. For some reason, this green is not the green that I wanted it to be, and I want it to be a completely different green because that's just what I decided. Rather than trying to find the file and open it up in Illustrator, InDesign makes it really easy. You can just right-click on the file and then tell it to edit. So you can, in InDesign, edit it with whatever thing you want. You can open it in Photoshop. You can open it in another InDesign file. You can open it in Adobe Acrobat. I'm going to open it in Illustrator. So my computer, I'm so sorry, I have a bunch of other stuff open. My computer is going to open Illustrator, find that file, send that file to Illustrator, and then open it for me all in one go. And I can edit it and save it, and then all of the changes will automatically update in my InDesign file, which is super cool. So let's say you're a week out from midterm or a week out from finals, and you need to get your stuff together. You can make your InDesign file and put in all of your Illustrator files in that file, and little by little, check all of the documents. You can say, oh, I really don't like how this axon is looking. Let me go in and change something. Right click on it, open the file, make your changes, save them. Let me quickly just make a giant glaring mistake. And just that way you can see the change show up. So I'm going to draw a giant gray box and I'm going to save it. When I go back to InDesign, what's going to happen is it's going to recognize that there's a new version of this file. And it's going to ask me, do you want me to update the link? And the way that it's going to show that is through a little, let's refresh this. Oh no, it won't let me refresh it. It's probably because it's so big. There we go. Okay, it popped up. It's gonna show me in the links a little caution sign, and it's gonna show me on the file, like on the spread, on the top left-hand corner of the frame. So it's gonna say, this was modified, click to open the links panel. The links panel is open. Then it's gonna say, double click to update. So I double click it. It's gonna take it a while because it's a big file. And it's gonna show me that change that I made, that giant gray square that I just threw on top of it. So that's another really cool way that you can kind of start to see your final project start to appear. And it's also really helped organize when you don't have to constantly be checking for additional files. You can just open up Illustrator or Photoshop, if it's a Photoshop file, straight from this file. I'm gonna go back in and delete that because I don't want it. And then when I save it, sure enough, it'll disappear again, which is super cool. Let me make sure it saves before I close it. Anyway, what else do we have? Let's say that you really want to have a very specific color scheme on your file itself. So let's say I want to use this image, which I created in Photoshop, as like the basis of my color scheme, color palette, if you will. Swatches, we've talked about swatches in our Illustrator video. Swatches are really, really helpful if you want to just have a quick reference of all of the colors that you've used at some point. InDesign is exactly the same in that sense. You can create an entire swatch category. So let's say that I want to change this text. Oh God, I forgot that that's part of the master. Okay, so if I want to change this text, I go to properties, and when I click fill, it'll open up the swatches. And it's the same for any shape that you create, really. If you click fill or if you click stroke, this is your swatches panel. So it gives you CMYK, which is, you know, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. And it also gives you RGB. These are standard printing as well as online colors, like, you know, references to help you make sure you're not messing up your colors. But that's about it. It won't give you any additional swatches. I think Illustrator does, it comes with swatches presets, so you could find like earthy colors, you can find a bunch of other stuff. You can even find patterns that are built in, but InDesign doesn't give you anything like that. If I want to make a swatch though, what I do is I pull out my eyedropper tool and I just select any color, and then I tell it over here in my swatches, and I pull up color, there we go. I can then save it, that color. So let me show that again. This is yellow. So it shows up here that my fill is currently yellow. I'm gonna make the stroke just white or empty. And then I come up to color and I tell it to add to my swatches. Again, if you're printing, we mentioned this in our Illustrator. If you're printing, like printing on a printer, set it to CMYK. If you're showing this on a computer screen, set it to RGB, because your computer screen uses RGB colors, but a printer uses CMYK. So just make sure to remember that. I'm on a computer right now, so I'm on RGB. I'm going to add it to my swatches. If I come down to swatches, it'll show up there as my RGB colors. And then I can double click it, and I can change it if I want to. I can also, for example, change the name. So like right now it's named with the RGB color code, but let's say I want to change the color to highlight for building. I don't know, whatever you want. And then it'll change the name so you can keep track of your swatches and keep track of your colors. Here, you'll notice that I double clicked the color while my text was highlighted, so it changed the color of the text, which is super cool. I can do the same thing for like the grass, come up to color, add it to my swatch. And then if I wanted to, I could very easily, actually, let's do something different. I could very easily select the box, for example, go to properties, go to fill, and then make the box green. You know, you can do everything really. You can just, if you want to do the text a color, make sure that you're highlighting the text. If you want to do the box as a color, make sure you're selecting the box itself. So yeah, making a color scheme is super easy. You saw how you can name the colors as well. We talked about how to fit the image to the frame. You can also, for example, if I wanted to make a new text box, hi there, I can very easily select the box, use the eyedropper tool, and just use the eyedropper tool to give me that color. So that's also another really easy option. If you don't want to go into the swatches on the right hand, you can just eyedrop to whatever it is that you wanted to use. This also works for text. So here I have my text highlighted. I want my text to match the text that I have at the top. Just click it, it'll copy everything. It'll copy the way that it was formatted, it'll copy the font, it'll copy the font size, it'll copy everything. So that's another really quick and easy way to just format stuff really fast. You can also, for example, do tables. So let's say I really quickly want to do a lot of text. I can insert a table. This is, again, just like Microsoft Word, honestly. Create a table, tell it the number of rows, tell it the number of columns, tell it the number of headers. Just to do an example, I'm going to make it a small table. So we're going to make 3 columns and 3 rows. So it'll be a square. And I plop it in, and it'll just automatically format that for me. So it's 3 columns, 3 rows, plus a header. I can make the header smaller. I can make the columns smaller. I can just format it however I like. And that's another really easy way to put large amounts of text on the page and then have it fit a format. You can remove the color of the lines as well. So right now, there's like a black line, which is what InDesign just automatically populates. But I don't want the black line. Let's say I want to have a gray line. You can very easily just do that as well. Let me see, properties, go to the top. So it gives me the stroke is black. I can double click that and tell it that I want to do the yellow that I picked for my swatch, which is also super cool. So now the top, Shift W. So now the top is black and then the lines itself are yellow, makes it a little bit more appealing to the eye. Let me see what else. If you want to, you could also do like page numbers on your master. So I think I mentioned that that was, I didn't show how to do it, but that is also an option if you're doing a booklet. So over here, let me move this over. And then let me type, where is it? Oh no, it's not there. It's because I don't have a text box. I'm silly. Okay. So if you want to insert a special character, make sure that you have the text box available for it to plop in. So current page number. And so that way it says A, but A is just to fill in for whatever page number it is. The font is different, so I'm going to change it to match the font that I have next to it. I'm going to drag and drop this smaller. And then when I go back to my original page, it's currently hidden by my giant image, but it's under there. So it does show up as number 2. And it'll do that for every additional left-hand page that I populate in. Yeah, I think that that covers a lot of the stuff that I wanted to quickly show. I know Jolene, who is here in the room with us, also has stuff that, because she uses InDesign a lot too. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and Jolene is going to hop on and share some more stuff.
Hi, friends. All right. So, yeah, Maria, you covered a lot of good stuff. Really great stuff. Oh, do you mind?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Totally forgot that I needed to enable that.
Yeah, all good. So
Okay.
the nice thing about InDesign is that grids essentially, here, let's see, screen 2. Okay, so the reason for, like, you use a grid, and I guess the history of a grid is that grids were created so that way you can organize text. And what's great about InDesign is that you can create everything based off of the baseline text, or sorry, the baseline grid. And so you can see, like, let's show in this like example right here, like these don't line up. And whenever you move them around, like it's just not great. Like to elevate and make it even greater, you can see that these will always line up as such to whatever grid that I have. So let's do that. What I like to do, if you go to file, edit, and then preferences, and then you can go to, where'd it go? Grids. You can create you can edit the baseline grid that you want. Let's say like, I'm gonna go it off with y'all, 12. I want it to go from the top margin that I already have, and then I'm gonna be, okay, cool. So this showed, like, it fixed my baseline grid right here. And what's nice to do, so I'm going to create a new, if you go to paragraph styles in this section area over here, and let's create a new paragraph style. I'm gonna call it main body. So this is, let's say like your main text. I'm gonna say no paragraph style for now. Whenever you create, this is really easy and nice, because whenever you change a certain text, let's say you wanted to change the font, you just have to change the paragraph style, and then it'll change everything for you. And so this is super easy. So I'm gonna say that the font size is gonna be 10 for this one, and then the leading size, because my baseline grid is 12, I'm just gonna say that this is also gonna be 12, just to follow it and make it nice, and it follows. And you can change, let's say like the character color, we want it to be red all the time. Don't try to do this, but then we can say that the indents, let's say like it's left justified. Okay, cool. Oh, one more thing. So you can edit this whenever you want to. And let's say right here, let me find it. Okay, yeah. So align to grid, you want it to always align to the baseline grid. So make sure you go to indents and spacing, and then all lines. Okay. So when you create your text, blah, 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 it will always align to this baseline grid, no matter where you put it. So if it's like right there, it will still align to the closest baseline grid, which is super helpful. And then let's see that over here. So now this is like my past one. It wasn't aligning to that, but let's say that we can change this to main body. Now it will always align that. Now let's fix and edit the subtitles, and then the main title, and then the extra large title. So we're gonna add a new one. We're gonna double click that. So let's say this is gonna be the subtitle. This is based off of the main body. So it takes whatever you have for the main body, and because we want the subtitle to be a little bigger, we're gonna triple this. So instead of 10, it's gonna be 30. And you go with the leading the same way. So 12, 24, and then 36. Right, and then let's say our subtitle will always be, where's color? Black. Boop. Alrighty. So whatever we have here, it will be lined up with whatever text that we have with this one as well. And then we got to edit that for the main title. We don't want this old one. We can delete that one. Boop. Okay. So now this is like a random one. We would do the very same thing with that. Let's say we take our subtitle and we want to create a main title based off of, yeah, the subtitle. You can pick which one you want it to go based off of. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the basic character format. Let's say 60, we're gonna double that. And then, actually no. Okay, yeah, this is gonna be like, our main title is always going to be like really small for some reason. Don't do that, but why not? 24, and then yeah, you would always try to. And then the difference between this one and then the subtitle is that you can see how the main title over here is always going to adjust to the bottom, or you can actually edit that. if you go up here, this one can align to the top and then this one can align to the bottom. I like making my titles align to the bottom of whatever the text box is. So that way, whenever you have a grid and then it doesn't quite go all the way to the bottom of the section, then it will just automatically drop to the bottom, which is pretty nice. And then when you want to get out of that view, you just press W and then it will show you how it will look like. So yeah, grids are helpful, and always try using grids for everything that you do, even in your design and also with the text and the format. And that's it. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. Does anybody have any questions that Maria and I can like help answer?
Totally, yeah.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. There you go. Woo, we did it.
Yeah, I mean, InDesign can be a little bit scary at first just because it has a lot of different functionalities, but it's really, really helpful for making a portfolio. It's really, really helpful for making multiple boards, which is also really cool. You can do several boards and just like line up your board that way. I definitely recommend that everybody try at least once to do your presentation boards or do your presentation booklet through InDesign. It'll make your life really easy once you start to get the hang of it. But yeah, if you have any questions, please speak up. If not, just remember that this video will be posted on YouTube. My name is Maria. I'm president of Opera Kai, and Jolene is our clerk. So she is also super helpful in the e-board. And if you have any suggestions for any other programs that we can teach, we'd be happy to share our knowledge. Right now, we're considering possibly doing a Photoshop one. And then maybe we'll look at see if anybody has any other suggestions. So.
Yay. Thank you. We made it.